Hello, everyone, for you. This can't be a long stream because I have a date with John Gisheler at 7:30, which is whatever time it is, but I put the stream that I'm going to be on with him in the description, and this is really to get you people to come and listen to us there. But of course, I will say a few words about the actual title of the stream, about why people who don't believe in God pretend to believe in God when they're not even compelled to these days. Of course, you know who I am thinking of. Well, Jay isn't the only one to do that. I mean, to be fair, a lot of people do that. And the expression, a believing Christian is I'm sure came into being before he was even born. So the reason why Westerners talk about Christians in these divisive terms is because obviously not all Christians really believe in Christianity. And we also know that Christians were forcibly converted into Christianity. This is something that Jay doesn't know, and I don't suppose I can blame him for that, because this is not the version of history that Europeans and Americans understand about themselves. They think, well, we're Christian because our mum and dad are Christian, and our grandma and grandpa are Christian, and so are their ancestors. So that's why I'm Christian. They only think in these vague terms without recognizing that Christians, with the exception of the original, with the exception of the first person who accepted the bargain with the Christian missionaries from Rome, would be forcibly converted. So you didn't really have a choice about it. You already know about the stories of heretics being burnt at the stake just for questioning the divinity of Jesus. I mean, they just questioned it. They didn't see how Jesus was God, as they were required to believe by the Trinity, and they just wouldn't shut up about it. And the only way to deal with them, as far as the monarch was concerned, was to burn them at the stake, to discourage the others. Why were such harsh measures taken? Because the whole idea of Christianity was that it supported the divine right of kings to rule, and this principle meant that the monarch would have to subject his subjects to his religion, because the principle of Cuius, regio, eius, religio, meant that subjects of the monarch had to follow his religion, whatever it was. That was really the principle by which European monarchs ruled. That was the bargain they had made with the Pope. And unfortunately, Christians don't understand their history this way. I mean, if they were to look up, all my references, they will find that they are, as I say. But this harsh view of Christianity is obviously not what they learned at their school when they, and these, and probably the first memory of Christianity they had was, family Christmases, some nativity play at school or something of that nature. And of course, all these memories are sacred, more or less. But the point is, these Westerners do not understand their history. They do not understand how they came to be Christian and how they came not to be Christian. And this reference I made to believing Christians as opposed to, well, more disbelieving Christians. So they have a term for that, and it is a cultural Christian. So a cultural Christian is somebody who is a Westerner who was born and grew up in the West and doesn't know any other religion, and whose first contact with any religious place of worship would be the church. So he would go to church he would remember his own baptism, but when his friends got married or when he got married, he would probably have it at the church. And at funerals, that would be at the church, and if his parents ever went to church, if his parents ever practiced their religion in any concrete way, they would take their children to church, at least at Easter or at Christmas. So that is the basis of cultural Christianity, and it doesn't mean that you really believe that Jesus is God, but you would be familiar with the rituals of Christianity. I'm quite familiar with it because, I went along with it. I was interested in these things, and I would have friends who would go to church, have weddings there, have funerals there. So I am familiar with its methods of operation and its rituals. I think I probably visited more churches than most Westerners. But religion is more than places of religious worship that are no longer frequented. Religion has an abstract purpose that we can only measure by seeing, how many of the principles of our moral system is actually reflected in the law of the land. This is pretty obvious, really, but I find that many things that are obvious to me seem to be completely incomprehensible to most people. And I don't know whether they are pretending not to understand or simply lack the capacity to know what I mean. Maybe they don't care to know what I'm saying, but why do they keep coming back and claiming to support me when they have so little understanding of what I'm trying to do? So it's interesting when you see people to whom you have been trying to explain a very simple idea for years now, who still don't get it, or could go into the usual loops of misunderstanding and mockery, and sometimes I just meet the person, and they immediately understand, and it is wonderful. But I do remember Rabbi Sacks saying more or less the same thing about Judaism and Jews, and saying how difficult it was to get people to understand something simple. And the problem is that they think they understand, but they don't. And because they think they understand, they reject your explanation. So I'm by no means the only person to suffer this problem. And when you think of Rabbi Sacks, of all persons, of all people, you see how prevalent this mindset is of thinking you understand something, but not really. And the difficulty in people who are trying to convey to you an idea and getting increasingly angry and frustrated that you can't do it. You can't understand a simple idea. Now, I know Jay has no education, no information, and no status, and he certainly didn't go to university, but I know there are people who have gone to university who are also incapable of making the obvious inferences of what I'm trying to say. But I think their reluctance is clearly deliberate, because they are wishing to avoid having to discuss my proposal. So what they can do is misunderstand it and dismiss it. But it is a matter of some interest to me, whether he's doing it on purpose or if he really lacks the capacity to understand it, and whether this can actually be addressed. I think it can, if I decided, well, if it were decided that I get the publicity I want and the broadcast facilities that I would need to make my message clear. Of course, only lawyers really need to understand it, and well, the Fourth Estate who would be expected to make programs explaining it and propagating it when they get round to it. I have many entertaining, and yes, they are quite entertaining ideas. So I hope it does happen. I think I'm getting closer now to my objective. I think what prevents people from seeing the solution that I propose is their hatred and fear. And, obviously somebody suffering from a phobia will be unable to absorb and understand ideas properly, particularly if they are playing the fool, being a clown, and have already decided that they're not going to support it because it would mean giving up too much of their, or risking too much of their status and access to sexual access to women. I think that is really, Jay's problem. I'm sure if I said, that every time you answer one of my questions correctly, you get £1,000, he would get all the answers correctly. And if I said, well, if you manage to sell the, secular Quranism to, if I said you get £100,000 for every 100 people that you that you can get to sign up to secular Quranism, he would be, chomping at the bit. So it's all a matter of incentive. He doesn't like secular Quranism as an idea. As an idea in the abstract that is capable of solving the problems of his country, because it doesn't profit him. It's just something that has no relevance for him, because he's a nihilist, and an atheist. But if you incentivize it, so yes, so I do see that money is needed for these things. Because we already know that in order to motivate people, most people are not motivated to do anything for the principle of the thing. And Jay is not a person who cares about the principle of the thing, but he's not the only one. But I'm hoping that, there will be people who find the idea useful and wish to propagate it, and I'm very grateful to Carol, who is thinking of new ideas to make the message more palatable and more comprehensible. And I think nothing could be better than to continue discussing it and asking questions that the morons and vegetables, excuse me, in the chat are not really capable of. Oh, excuse me, I just sneezed again. Where was I? So yeah, I read somewhere that new movements are quite difficult to start because people are just not interested in new ideas, because very few people are interested in ideas per se. It's not just secular Quranism. They'll see, well, what is it for? How is it going to benefit me? All that kind of thing. And I think it becomes increasingly obvious that as Americans become more fearful of their future, they will, I think, look towards more radical solutions. I have been trying to explain to Americans the importance of, not they have to push the idea of the one party state, because they're not going to fix their education otherwise. Because the whole reason why I became convinced that the one party state was the answer was because I knew that education was not going to be fixed in one term of office, and that's why they will never even try to do it. They will just keep hiding the failure of the education system by changing the grading system, by changing the curriculum and changing the syllabus. And yes, you can, you think you can escape the consequences of your terrible public education by homeschooling your children, but this is not a sustainable solution for any American or any Westerner who wants to fight the degeneracy being caused by the current policies. And really, you can't kick it down. You can't kick the can down the road, because doing it would just mean it's the equivalent of knowing your roof is leaking and refusing to fix it because you can't be bothered, or whatever reason you give. You have to fix it, or everything else will be ruined. Your walls, your furniture, your carpet. You have to fix it now. You can't just wait for the next generation to do it. And because it is that through schools that you're getting all these poisonous ideas that are being and your children are being indoctrinated with. And why do you need all these parties if really all you need is one good party that will actually do what it ought to be doing without you having to vote? It will just know what it has to do to sail the ship of state, to keep it afloat, to do the right thing without pretending to ask you what you want, and they're not giving it to you. So I'm afraid idolatry is a problem, because atheists may think they're not idolaters, but of course they have their own conceptual idolatry. They have the idolatry of feminism, the idolatry of sex with consenting adults being their human right. They have the idolatry of democracy and fighting elections and that sort of nonsense. And they can't see beyond that. So actually, the Jews were right about idolatry. But idolatry is more insidious than just bowing before idols. Because there's nothing in the Bible or the Quran that says we have to fight elections. There's nothing in it. But we, or a lot of Westerners anyway, treat the fighting of elections as, well, in effect, sacred and more important than our supposed belief in God and the afterlife and all that sort of thing. And even when I tell you that this is a problem, this is, I've gone through the whole rigmarole of explaining why it's wrong, and how Hitler said in Mein Kampf how badly it worked out for the Austrians when he was observing parliamentary proceedings in Vienna. And he explained it very well, but there's a kind of mental block. People don't want to get it because they don't want to do it. They don't want to be the people who say that they want a one-party state. They can't do it. They can't bring themselves to do it, or they think, well, even if I did, terrible things would happen to me for proposing a one-party state. And so they propose half measures that won't solve the problem. And this is a terrible sadness of it all. So it is these things that I really need to point out to people who are kind of being interested in secular Quranism. And I'm saying, I don't do it for fun. I'm not asking you to say these radical things just to humiliate you and risk your relationships and whatever. I'm not doing it for fun. I'm saying, if you can't say what you need to say to address a problem, you're just not going to be able to solve it. So forget it. But then the people who look at the enormity of the task, as I believe Jay has already given up, and that's why he takes to throwing stones at me, because his ego dictates that he has to do something to make his presence known. Even if it is destructive, he will do it, because it is better than him, well, not doing anything. But his engagement is in a way helpful, because he's a microcosm of the psychological state of most Westerners. Because he's not the only one ignoring me and taking adopting these tactics. There are plenty of people that I speak to in real life and have met who take on a similar attitude, because it's too much for them. I'm saying, yeah, you are challenging about 2,000 years of Christian history, and yeah, you are challenging 250 years of liberalism. I'm sorry, this is what I'm doing. So I'm not going to beat about the bush and say, no, it's not really what I'm doing. We can just we'll tinker around at the edges and everything will be fine. And we just it's like, what is it? It's called a combover, isn't it? When a man has lost his hair and he's got enough hair on each side and he thinks he can cover the bald bit. Which is a bit like sweeping problems under the carpet. But if terrible things, if so many things are going to have to change, you might as well say, well, this has got to be done as well. So that's really what I'm saying. I will soon be at John Gesheler's channel, so I have to go now. Thank you all for coming. So Cuius is one of those people who doesn't understand. You have freedom of belief. It is Sharia, and it guarantees you freedom of belief. The Jews, Muslims, and Christians who reject secular Quranism are, of course, ignoramuses, and who are not confident enough in their own intellect to engage with me. And it's easier to say it won't work than to actually ask questions. Okay, off I go. Thank you for coming.